Q&A time, or they hang out in the lobby or whatever. When was the last time you actually watched the movie?
Last time I saw it on a big screen was 37 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I was 4. So, yeah. But I wanted to see it, I brought my son who's 11, and I wanted him to see it on a big screen.
Okay. Has he seen it before?
On the television.
Oh, on TV, okay. Talk about, sorry, I'm just pulling out my questions here. Talk about your, how you got involved with the project in the first place. Was this something that your agent found for you? Was it something that Joel Schumacher kind of requested you for? Do you remember, if you remember how that all came together?
Well, movies were different, back then in the 80s. It was just with John Hughes and those movies, kids for the first time were going to be sort of the stars of movies. And there was a big shift, sort of paradigm shift in the movie. And I was just a young actor, and I would sometimes, just went out on auditions. And there was a very famous casting director who cast this named Marion Dougherty, who was someone who actually found James Dean. And at that time, probably 30 years prior. So I just went in and auditioned, and when they wanted me to do the movie, and then Schumacher likes to talk about that I famously turned it down many times, which is true. And they got me to do it, yeah.
I saw that on IMDb, but the IMDb will also tell you that, like, I'm the president or something, so you can't trust anything.
I thought
everything
you were.
Yeah. So that is interesting. So you did turn it down. That is
I
true.
did.
Oh wow. If you recall, did it change? Did the script ever change at all? Was it something that you're like, well, I'm not so sure about this, and then they
Well, that was the
modified
thing. Even then, I didn't want to just make some teen, goofy vampire movie. And as you watch it on the big screen, this movie is inspired a lot of other movies that we're used to now, 30 years going. But at the time, a movie wasn't made like this. So, I didn't want to be just in a movie like that. I wasn't interested. But when Joel told me what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it, and the actors he wanted to do, and it's funny when you see the screenplay credit. I mean, they didn't write this. This was all Joel and the people that were involved. He gave us, I was 19 years old, and they gave me a lot of freedom to create that character, and that's all a credit to Joel. The whole movie's a credit to Joel, really.
Yeah, round of applause for Joel. And somebody else is sadly no longer with us, Corey, who obviously is, you spend a lot of your scenes with him. Talking about forming that brotherly bond, you guys really do pull that off. You really value guys instantly as brothers. And did you guys get to kind of hang out for a bit before you started filming, or did you know him before or anything like that? Or
I met him. I met him when Joel introduced me to him, but it was one of those things where I wanted to spend a lot of time with him because I wanted a lot of that unsaid stuff that you believe that they were brothers physically, and I thought that would connect into a sort of naturalism that I think really works in the movie. I mean, once again, I haven't seen it on a big screen in 35 years, but all movies should be watched on a big screen whenever possible. So it's wonderful that you guys are doing things like that.
Yeah.
And because the subtleties and the way you frame things, the way you rehearse things, are all meant to be seen on this scale. And there's so many little subtleties are lost with good actors when you're watching it on your iPhone. So we spent a lot of time together, and because of that, I'm watching it this time. The horror comedy balance, in truth, really is due to Corey. I can see it now on the screen because he can be believable in 1 second and then absolutely throw humor in a way that doesn't take away from the naturalism that's also happening. And that was a gift that he had, and it's truly really well done here. And I think he brings that into the Fog Brothers. Look, I'm playing serious, and Kiefer's playing scary, and everyone's doing their thing, but Corey really makes that balance where you don't know what this movie is going to be. And, God bless him, but that is due to him. And it's evident to me, really seeing it today.
One of your first early scenes, you're driving up on the motorcycle, you're kind of driving up behind. I mean, some of the other stuff, you can't really tell if you're really right, but that's definitely you. Did you know how to drive a motorcycle beforehand, or did you learn for this?
I learned for this. And I remember, Kiefer bragging that he had a lot of motorcycles and all that stuff. And of course, he broke his hand on the motorcycle day one. That's why he wears gloves in the movie, because they had to put a plastic cast on his hand.
Love it. Talk about actually working with Kiefer. Yeah, obviously, you kind of antagonistic toward each other throughout a lot of the movie, but did you guys get along okay? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, the first day we filmed was the first scene you see when we meet. And so there was sort of that, you know, fake young actor tension from the 80s guys trying to do something. And, but, you know, I talked to Kiefer yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, we've remained friends like that,
The makeup on the movie is really good because it's not overly elaborate. You see more of the human than the creature, which I like. Because sometimes they go so overboard. It's like, well, yeah, you're probably a stunt guy at this point, but I mean, that's obviously you. Can you talk about doing the makeup with Greg Cannon?
Well, I mean, one of the things I didn't want to do the movie is I said I don't want to have fangs and I don't want to have makeup. And Joel said, "Don't worry, you won't have to have either." And of course, he lied. So,
it's subtle though. It's not.
No. I mean, once again, 35 years on, everybody's used to this kind of stuff, but that was brand new back then. Nobody had. What he wanted to do is accentuate what he explained to me. You can see is accentuate the natural features that would come out in some sort of feral, animalistic way, but keeping who you were. And Joe wanted everything to look good and also be sexy. So, and Cannon and V. Neal, who's now won several Oscars, these people were brand new back then. Greg Cannon wasn't even in the union. We had to go to his place for him to do that kind of stuff. So, and because Joel told me I'd never have to wear makeup, I think I wore someone else's appliances because in the end, the studio forced me to do it and all that. We did it.
For the big fight.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you watch this, unlike movies today where everything's CGI and you sort of, you know, shut down, all this stuff is real stuff, in-camera stuff. And as good as CGI is, something in your brain knows that it's a computer, and part of you relaxes. So we have to come up with all these things, the wire work, the flying. Our eyes are not digitally done. Those were full contact lenses that, you know, had to be placed in. You know, and Kiefer will say that sort of famous moment that you saw when he reaches out and grabs his son, burns his hand, and then he looks and there's a sadness, he's crying. Total accident. The fact is they were in too long and his eye watered at that exact moment.
Wow.
And so people thought, what a great choice. Well,
Were they those hard plastic kind of contacts?
They
that
were.
had? Yeah. So
And they had to put them in
you
with
can't see worth a shit.
with a little plunger.
Yeah.
But once again, there's a subtlety that our mind knows things when you're watching. And today everything is so overdone with CGI that we all shut off. You know? And you can go on TikTok and see deep fakes. There's nothing really exciting about that. And this was all created in a way. And not unlike The Exorcist, all those things are in camera, and there's a certain visceral reality to the moment when you come up with that kind of stuff. And once again, that's credit to Joel and all the people that he pulled together to accomplish that.
Yeah, the reliance on CG really kind of robs you of the magic because you just kind of, even when, you know, a movie comes out that is practical, you're almost assuming that's probably CG.
Right.
And back then, I mean, that's what's great about going back to these older movies. We know it can't be CG because they didn't have that back then. We know that everything they're doing in this, they really put you guys through. You guys had to figure all that out. And that's what, you know, I think that's why a lot of these, you know, for that aspect of it, I think that's why these movies endure. And like you said, you know, seeing them on the big screen just elevates it all that much more.
Well, they're not relying on what you know is going to be an effect. These effects were made to bring a catharsis or a crescendo to what the characters are going through. So the effects were always secondary to push the characters to those places. So I think that's why it endures and it lasts like that. And, you know, I mean, look, the guy who shot this movie is Michael Chapman, you know, the great Michael Chapman. This is a guy who shot Taxi Driver and Raging Bull.
Yeah.
You don't have guys like that making a teen vampire movie. So, you know, the people that he collected to make this idea are just really stunning technicians. And I think it holds up in every way, that aspect.
Another iconic scene is of course, the bridge scene, which if you'd like, you can go see. It's actually just up near Six Flags, and it's still there. They've remodeled it a bit. Can you talk a little bit about shooting that scene? I assume they didn't really have you hanging, but maybe they did.
I think we had a platform underneath us, and then in long shots where our stunt guys Yeah, it was all night, and then in the studio they filled up. I think when I fell down, what they did is they filled the studio completely with smoke. They put me on sort of a lazy Susan, and then went away from the camera as the camera was following me, so it appeared that I was just falling through fog. Once again, they have to find out how do we make this realistic. Yeah. And today they would just whip it up in a way, and it's just not as effective. So that goes to all those people. I just spun around.
And same for the flying, like outside the windows, similar sort of rigs, or?
Yeah, I mean, different rigs, and you know, just really interesting. Once again, seeing it on the big screen because I haven't seen it since then. Just when you're following his face up there, and then it gets whooshed to the ceiling,
yeah.
and you don't know what's going on. It puts you in the sort of first-person subjective place of the character, and so you're discovering it as he does, and it's just always more interesting. And there's a sort of violence to it that's real as opposed to spectacle.
We have time for a couple questions from you guys, if you have any questions, if you want to think of them. But just curious, I think while we're talking about effects and CG and all that stuff, what kind of you don't do a lot of genre films, but you do them on occasion. Frankenstein, Unbound was one. You're actually at Screenfest a couple years ago, The Abandoned, which is a cool movie. But do you yourself, do you kind of interested? Do you ever watch, just throw on horror movies for your own enjoyment, or what kind do you gravitate toward? So.
Yeah, I mean, more of the interesting real type stuff. As I said, I think I don't like these movies that are all sequels. I don't like the horror universe of The Conjuring and all those things. I just don't think it's interesting. But I mean, you guys make are showing interesting independent things. The foreign horror, once again, the stuff that works is the stuff that has to do with the human condition, just put in an extreme situation. And that's why something like, I mean, The Exorcist works not purely because Reagan is possessed by the devil, it's because Ellen Burstyn's daughter is dying, and that's how she plays it. Yeah. And then all the other stuff just accentuates that human drama. And so I think horror and good horror can really do that today. But unfortunately, a lot of it gets lost up in what we, all these basically just rebooting things, like the Halloween stuff and all that.
I forget who it was that said it, but they said that the best kind of horror movies to them were like the ones that if the killer or the monster or whatever never showed up, you would still be interested in that movie. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot that just that would be no movie whatsoever.
Right, but I mean, I don't know if anyone would realize, but you don't see a vampire in this movie almost for an hour. That would be impossible today. Impossible. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, they'd start at the end. The first scene of the movie now would be you and Kiefer flying around. That'd be like 12 days earlier. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No attention span now. That's why I don't like it. Do we have any questions from you guys out there? Just if you do, just kind of wave your arm a little because I can't really see with the light. I see a hand there. There we go.
So,
Loud.
So speaking of remakes, you don't like remakes. How do you feel that they're trying to remake The Lost Boys?
If you didn't hear the question, was how do you feel about any sort of remake of The Lost Boys?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this the other day to someone, is that the concept, it's not like a Marvel concept. This is kids who move to a town and then there's some vampires there. That's not why people like The Lost Boys 35 years later. It's because the Kiefer Sutherland's in it and Corey Haim's in it and Jill Schumacher directed and Michael Chapman filmed it, and there's that soundtrack. It's the individual aspects that were all put together that made that movie, and that's the problem, that people just want to sell Coca-Cola now, so they might as well call it Coca-Cola Lost Boys. That will never be the same. There's been 50 vampire movies since then that don't touch the sort of aspect that this seems to have rung with people. So, they'll do it and they'll sell it like something else, but to me it's not of interest.
Did you ever, out of curiosity, check out the sequels that they did?
No.
It's a wise choice. I thought I saw another one. Yeah, right there.
I was just going to ask, what's the best thing a director can do to help like an actor get into characters?
What's the best thing a director can do to help the actor get into character?
I think he has to know each individual actor that he's working with and try to understand what gets them to their best self. I mean, in this case, Joel would talk differently to me than he would talk to Diane Wiest, you know, and certainly different to the other kids. So I think there's an intuition in really understanding who you're working with. Some like Elie Kazan was really good with that. So to understand, you know, basically know what you want the character to do in a scene, where the character is going. You have to be online, both of you have to be in line with that. And then understanding what gets that person to that place. And that takes a sensitivity and a lot of listening. And I will give that to Joel. As I said, once again, I was 19 years old at the time. I had never had a movie come out. It's a big studio movie, and he was letting me rewrite my stuff. He was listening to me about, this is what my room should look like, and this is what this should look like. And that wouldn't happen today. It didn't happen back then. But he found people that he thought this was the best my movie will be if I can get this out of these people. So I had a lot of, you know, input and power that was just very rare. So I think a director has to be very understanding of the components he's put together.
Thoughts on the hand somewhere in this area. Was there one? Yes.
I was just curious. There's a band from Helsinki, from Finland, called the 69 Eyes, and they have a song called Lost Boys, and they do like a whole, you know, regale music video along. But it's I wonder if you ever heard of that band.
I haven't, but I will check Spotify tonight.
69 Eyes, yeah, you might like it.
69
They're
Eyes.
from Finland, yeah.
All right. I have heard of them, but I didn't hear the Lost Boys. So that's
Yeah, they have a Lost Boys song.
yeah, right here.
I'm curious, what's the most memorable scene you filmed, and why did you not, or your favorite scene you filming, and what made it so special to you?
The most memorable scene. What made it special to you? Yes.
I don't know. You know, it's hard because I haven't seen it in so long. But I mean, some of these memories come back. I can only say, I remember walking up those stairs when Corey was in the bathtub singing and all that kind of stuff. Because I remember the stuntman said, you know, if I put this dog on a ramp and he jumps on you, think you could handle it? I said, I guess so. And so I do remember that dog launching off and me just crashing backwards. But I think that whole scene that people seem to like, you know, with the sax guy and all that, there was hundreds of people there, and it was bright and wild and music, and you're 19, and you realized this is a big movie. And so there was something sort of exciting about that. But you know, it was a long time. It was 4 months, and unlike the other characters, I'm pretty much in most of it working with each of them. So there were different experiences, and so I couldn't really put one. But I will say that with perspective, it was a very unique and special time. At the time, I felt a lot of pressure, but I mean now I can appreciate other aspects.
Did you say 4 months?
Yeah.
Wow. We have a lot of, obviously, independent filmmakers that come to our festival, and they might cry if they heard they had 4 months to shoot a film.
Well, I mean, look, most of the movies I've made since then are independent movies, so I mean, I certainly know what you can pack in and how you have to pack in. So yeah, I mean, that was a big thing. But movies did take longer back then. You know, certainly did.
Kind of like on the flip side of favorite scenes, do you remember shooting anything that didn't end up making it, that you kind of maybe missed or at least enjoyed making? It's a short movie, but I mean, a lot of movies back then are kind of all in that 90-minute
There's a
range.
scene with Steve Martin and Milton Berle that just didn't make it.
Should've.
Completely lying. No, I don't. I mean, there is stuff that didn't make it, but I don't know.
Maybe time for one more. Does anybody else have a question?
I got one.
You got one? Okay.
Theater
Oh, there's.
owner, I just want to say that we always enjoy running Jason Patric films. We ran The Vanished last year, and for one of, you know, a Screamfest type of question, one of the scariest characters I ever saw you do was the character in Your Friends and Neighbors. And I would say the monologue that you had towards the end of that film was mind-blowing. And I would just love to hear your recollections from that incredible performance as you sit here tonight with us.
Well, I mean, one of the things, as I said, about most of the movies I made have really been independent, and that was we did Lost Boys in 4 months. We did that probably in 23 or 24 days, and I had a production company, so I put it together. I met Neil LaBute before his first movie came out, and I really liked him and thought he was a real talent. I said, "Do you have anything else?" And he had this script. And I said, "Well, I'm going to get this made for you." And at the time, I wasn't going to be in it. I said, "I'll get you other actors that might help you out more than me." And then he really wanted me to play that part. So we rehearsed for 3 weeks, which never happens, but I wanted to create the best situation for actors, the kind of situation I always wanted to have. The one scene that we never rehearsed was that monologue. And we built a steam room for it and a tracking shot. And I said to Neil, I said, "Look, I didn't tell you how to do anything in this, but I'm telling you this has to be one shot. And it has to be uncut. And not because of me, but because of what you've written. It's an amazing monologue. If I can't handle it, then we'll figure something out. But you've got to do this in one shot." And because it was uncut, I had to do 8 or 9 takes of it. But it was just beautifully written, extremely hard to do. But I think it worked. And I put Catherine Keener in it before she was Catherine Keener. Ben Stiller left that movie the next day to do something about Mary. Aaron Eckhart, these are people who hadn't broke, so I was able to just put the people I wanted in it and do it the way it should be done. And I think it still endures because of that.
Alrighty, thank you so much for coming out and watching the movie with us. Great. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you. Please, like I said before, check out the Screenfest site. We got a couple more days of programming if you guys want to check anything else out. And thank you to the Arena for hosting us tonight. That was great. Hope we can see you guys again. And drive safe. Be good. Bye.
Thank you.